All right, we are on to the second initiation, the baptism in the Jordan, Ray 6, the energy of idealism and devotion, and the initiatory process between the first initiation of the birth of the Christ and the beginning of the conscious unfoldment of the Christ life and awareness. The life of the initiate has undergone a pronounced reorientation. He is now capable of an equally pronounced and often fanatical adherence to the program of aspiration and of devotion to the good as he sees it at this stage. This is symbolized for us in the story of the 12-year-old Jesus, who was so conscious that he must be about his Father's business that he defied his parents, caused them distress, and astonished those older than he by his spiritual poise and knowledge. This he offset by going down to Galilee and being subservient to his parents. A somewhat similar attitude, without the developed and inclusive understanding manifested by the Christ, can be seen expressing itself in the disciple during the period wherein the new orientation is taking place. The disciple is learning to discipline his lower nature and to achieve a measure of mastery over his physical inclinations. He thus releases physical energy and brings order into his life. This takes a very long time and may cover a cycle of many incarnations. He is constantly fighting against his lower nature and the requirements of his soul, as he somewhat ignorantly interprets them, are in constant session against the animal nature and increasingly in relation to the emotional nature. Above all, he becomes aware of a secondary relation involving a most difficult problem and one which enhances the fight and intensifies his problem. He discovers that his emotional nature, his lower psychic faculties, his astral development, and the potency of glamour are now all arrayed against him. The reorientation with which he is now faced has to be brought about primarily on the astral plane, because that has been for untold aeons the level of his major polarization and the sphere of activity and the state of consciousness which has dominated him. The physical body is not a principle. His etheric body has, since Atlantean days, been the agent of his astral energy, for the mind nature is not yet developed and cannot, therefore, adequately take control. He discovers that he lives in a chaos of emotional reactions and of conditioning glamours. He slowly begins to realize that in order to take the second initiation, he must demonstrate emotional control. He realizes also that he must have some knowledge of those spiritual energies which will dissipate glamour, but an understanding of the technique whereby illumination from the mind, as the transmitting agent of the light of the soul, can dispel these glamours and thus clarify the atmosphere in the technical sense. I might emphasize that as yet no initiate demonstrates complete control during the intermediate period between any initiation and the higher initiation. The intermediate period is regarded as a cycle of perfecting. That which is being left behind and subordinated to the higher realization is slowly dominated by energies which are to be released into the consciousness of the initiate at the initiation for which he is being prepared. This interim period is always one of great difficulty. The energies being registered, made active, and finally used are steadily increasing in number and potency at each initiation. These impacts upon the rays of the soul and the personality rays of the initiate on the subsidiary vehicles through which he works in the three worlds and upon their individual conditioning rays produce at first tremendous difficulties. These the initiate must master, and the problems involved he must solve. He thereby becomes a master, and the process, as it goes forward from initiation to initiation, becomes, after the third initiation, the transfiguration, less hard and distressing. The reason for this is that he is increasingly master of his own individual situation. He is, however, occultly involved in the difficulties and the problems of the group and of that totality of groups which we call humanity. The initiatory process between the first and the second initiations is for many the worst time of distress, difficulty, realization of problems, and the constant effort to clear himself, as it is occultly called, to which the disciple is at any time subjected. The phrase stating that the objective of the initiate is to clear himself is perhaps the most arresting and illuminating of all possible definitions of the task to be undertaken. The storm aroused by his emotional nature, the dark clouds and mists in which he constantly walks, and which he has created throughout the entire cycle of incarnated living, have all to be cleared away in order that the initiate can say that, for him, the astral plane no longer exists, and that all that remains of that ancient and potent aspect of his being is aspiration, a sensitive response to all forms of divine life, and a form through which the lowest aspect of divine love, goodwill, can flow without impediment. From the larger point of view, it is this struggle to clear the world atmosphere which will confront humanity after the first initiation, so close at hand today. You will see, therefore, why the Christ must come at this time, for he is the one who presides at the first and second initiations, and it is his coming which will indicate that humanity has taken the first initiation, which will confirm and consolidate the work done, and which will inaugurate the world cycle and period in which the task of reorganizing the emotional and psychic life of humanity will take place. This period will release the energy of goodwill and thus automatically bring about right human relations. As regards humanity as a whole, polarized as it is in the emotional nature, the effect of the sixth ray is potent in the extreme. Its energy has been playing upon men ever since it came into incarnation, and the last 150 years have seen that potency become extremely effective. Two factors have enhanced this effect. One, the sixth ray of idealism or of devotion, is the ray which normally governs the astral plane, controlling its phenomena and coloring its glamour. And two, the stream of energy coming into our planetary light from the constellation Pisces has for 2,000 years conditioned human experience and is peculiarly fitted to blend with and complement the sixth ray energy and to produce exactly the situation which is today governing world affairs. The united activity of these two great streams of cosmic energy, playing upon and through the third planetary center, humanity, has created the unique condition in which the race of men can stand before the planetary initiator, the Christ, and under the focused stimulation of the hierarchy, pass through the appropriate initiation. It should here be remembered that the masses of men can and will take the first initiation, but that a very large group of aspirants, far larger than is realized, will pass through the experience of the second initiation, that of the purifying baptism. These are the people who express the essential qualities of ideological recognition, devoted adherence to truth as sensed, profound reaction to the physical disciplines imposed since they participated in the first initiation many lives earlier, and a growing responsiveness to the aspirational aspect of the astral body. This aspiration is occupied with reaching out towards contact with and expression of the mental principle. This particular group in the human family are common monastic initiates, just as those taking the first initiation are physico-etheric initiates. It is the activity of this sixth ray which has brought out into the light of day the growing ideological tendencies of mankind. These world ideologies, of which there are many present in the world today, are created by a triple reaction to the two streams of energy mentioned above. 1. The unfoldment of the mental principle in mankind during this Aryan age has enforced desire into the form of great mass concepts. These unitedly are governing the mass tendency toward mental unfoldment. And 2. The steadily growing soul influence, working like a leaven on the astral plane, has lifted kama, or desire, out of its purely self-centered focus and brought it in a new and hitherto unexpressed group emotional consciousness. This leads the fused emotional nature of men into great ideological mass expression, still selfish, expressed and impulsed as yet by emotional excesses, but indicating new and better goals. These goals will assume clearer and more desirable outlines when the second initiation is undergone by the world aspirant. 3. The influence generated by the Shambhala energy, which has, for the first time, made direct contact with humanity, is producing an emotional vortex in which old ideals and institutions are seen divorced from their hitherto controlling glamours, thus permitting the new and better ideologies to emerge in the consciousness of the race. All these factors are responsible for the world situation at this time. Great ideologies, potent groupings of workers and thinkers dedicated to the changing of the old order, and massed efforts to end separativeness are all present simultaneously. The essential etheric world unity, of which the telephone, the radio, and the airplane are the tangible expression, is swinging vast groups of men everywhere into united emotional activity, thus creating those preliminary testings which ever precede initiation, and by means of which those capable of taking the second initiation are today passing. I cannot here enlarge upon the various ideologies which are presenting themselves to the world of men, impulsed by the hierarchy, precipitated into the human consciousness from the mental plane by the new group of world servers, implemented by the energy of the sixth ray, by the dominant Piscean energy, and by the organizing energy of the incoming seventh ray, and responding to emotionally by the masses of men focused on the astral plane. To all intelligent observers, this ideological situation is clear. It is a needed and preliminary stage to the creation of the New World Order. It provides a point of crisis and the required point of tension which will enable those aspirants who are ready today, in their thousands, to pass through the experience of the second initiation and to undergo the purification of the fluid emotional nature in the baptism initiation. Through this experience, the Kama monastic aspirant will be in a positive and spiritual condition to bring about, on the astral plane, those fundamental changes, rearrangements, and adjustments which will bring that level of planetary consciousness into line with the immediate divine purpose, the manifestation of the kingdom of God. The work of the sixth ray energy, the result of the long cycle of Piscean energy, and the impact of the incoming Aquarian energy will bring a potent transformation in the watery realm of the astral plane. The symbol of that plane has ever been water, fluid, stormy, reflecting all impressions, the source of mist and fog, and yet ever essential to human living. The Piscean age, now in process of passing away, is also closely related to this plane and to the symbol of water. It fixed in the human consciousness the realization that men are as fishes immersed in the sea of emotions. Aquarius is also known by the symbol of water, for Aquarius is the water carrier. The sixth ray will bring together all these energies in time and space: ray energy, Piscean energy, Aquarian energy, and the energy of the astral plane itself. This again produces a vortex of force, which is invocative of mental energy. It is a controlling factor which has plunged humanity into a tumultuous awareness of clashing ideologies, which has precipitated a reflected vortex in the world war, and which is responsible for the present crisis and point of tension. This critical point of tension will enable groups of aspirants who, having passed through the first initiation, can undergo the baptism experience, again a word identified with water. Simultaneously, large masses of men will take the first initiation and, in the house of bread, stand before the initiator. The coming Christ will therefore initiate two groups of aspirants within the near future and in preparation for his coming. It is the closer approach of the Christ and of the hierarchy of masters to humanity which is implementing the initiatory energies, which is crystallizing the ideologies present today in the human consciousness and fostering, if I may so express it, the latent ideology of the kingdom of God. As regards the individual initiates to undergo the initiation of the baptism, the effect of the sixth ray energy upon his nature is easily apparent, owing to the extreme potency of the second aspect of the personality in the three worlds, his astral body or nature. In the early stages of the impact of sixth ray energy upon his emotional nature, a perfect vortex of force is generated. His emotional reactions are violent and compelling. His glamours are intensified and controlling, and his aspiration steadily mounts, but is at the same time limited and hindered by the strength of his devotion to some sensed ideology. Later, under the influence of an increasing soul contact, itself the second aspect of his essential divinity, his emotional, comic, and aspirational nature becomes quieter and is more controlled through the agency of the mind. His alignment becomes astral mental soul. When this state of consciousness has been achieved and the waters of the astral body are quiet and can reflect the beautiful and the true, and when his emotions have been purified by intense self-effort, then the disciple can step into the baptismal waters. He is then subjected to an intense purificatory experience which, occultly speaking, enables him forever to step out of the waters and be no longer in danger of drowning or of submergence. He can now walk on the surface of the sea and with safety proceed onward towards his goal. The effect of sixth ray activity upon the mental nature is, as you may imagine, a tendency, first of all, to the crystallizing of thought, a reaction to imprisoning ideologies, and a fanatical mental adherence to mass ideals with no understanding of their relationship to the need of the time or to intended creative aspects. Later, as the disciple prepares for the second initiation, these tendencies are transformed into spiritual devotion to human welfare and to a one-pointed adherence to the plan of the hierarchy. All emotional reaction to the hierarchy of masters fades out, and the disciple can now work without being hindered by constant astral disturbances. The effect of sixth ray energy upon the integrated personality of the disciple can only be described as producing a condition wherein he is definitely astral Buddhic in his nature. Gradually, his one-pointed emotional effort towards orientation to the soul makes him an an aspiring point of tension, oblivious of crisis and firmly anchored in love which streams forth from the soul. Let me sum up what I have said and note the effect of sixth ray energy. 1. The energy of the sixth ray produces two major results. A. An embryonic realization of the will nature which determines the life of the initiate. B. A pronounced conflict between the lower and higher self. This reveals to the initiate the ancient conflict between the emotional nature and true realization. This brings about a basic reorientation of the life of the initiate and of humanity as a whole. 2. In connection with humanity, the effects of the sixth ray are as follows. A. The development of a tendency to clarify the world atmosphere, thus releasing the energy of goodwill. B. The production of a condition wherein the race of men can take either the first or second initiation. And C. The sudden and powerful emergence of the world ideologies. And D. A basic transformation within the astral plane itself, which is producing points of crisis and a point of tension. And 3. In relation to the individual initiate, the sixth ray produces A. An acute situation wherein a vortex of force is generated. B. In this vortex, all the emotional and ideological reactions of the aspirant are intensified. C. Later, when this subsides, the initiate's alignment becomes astral mental soul. And D. There takes place, in connection with his mental vehicle, a crystallization of all thought and a fanatical adherence to mass idealism. E. These tendencies are later transformed into spiritual devotion to human welfare. And F. The personality becomes definitely astral Buddhic in nature and expression. You will see, therefore, how immediate and important is the opportunity confronting humanity today. Vast numbers of men will take the first step towards the unfolding of the Christ consciousness, and thus pass through the first initiation. This often, I might well say usually, takes place without the conscious realization of the physical brain. This first initiation is, and always has been, mass initiation, even when individually registered and recorded. Thousands of aspirants in every country, as a result of conscious effort to understand, will stand before the initiator and undergo the baptism initiation. Bread and water are the symbols of these first two initiations. Both are basic essentials for life in the physical sense and are equally basic in their implications spiritually. This the initiate knows. These two initiations are the only two of significant importance at this time, owing to their relative immediacy. It is the return of the Christ which has brought these subjective spiritual tendencies of mankind to the surface and made these two initiations possible. It is the activity of the seventh ray of order and of the sixth ray of idealism which has generated the tendency in humanity toward the white magic of right human relations. These have fostered the trend to ideological control of the human consciousness. It is the passing out of the Piscean age with its type of energy and the coming into power of the Aquarian age with its potent purificatory energies and its quality of synthesis and universality, which will make the New World Order possible. It is therefore apparent that the opportunity confronting humanity has never been so promising, and that the corporate relation and fusion of all these energies makes the manifestation of the sons of God and the appearance of the kingdom of God an inevitable happening in our planetary life. As we study the other ray energies and their initiatory effect, we shall not be able to indicate a great deal in relation to humanity itself. Only the first two initiations, which are implemented by the Christ, and which are under the supervisory probation of the spiritual hierarchy, are as yet possible to humanity. The initiation of the Transfiguration is not yet for the mass of men. We can, however, study the effects of these rays where the individual disciple is concerned, because the later initiations, from the third initiation onward, are administered by the Lord of the world from his high place in Shambhala. In the present world cycle, these initiations are individually administered and registered and are undergone consciously and with an entirely awakened awareness. It will be apparent to you that I shall necessarily have more to say anent the first three initiations and the ray effects upon the initiate and upon humanity than will be possible when the higher initiations come under consideration. The effects of ray impacts in the first three initiations come via the soul, and the initiate is, during this period, a struggling aspirant under the inspiration and the stimulation of the hierarchy of which he is becoming increasingly aware. After the third initiation, which is in reality, as you well know, the first major initiation, the ray energy is applied, if I may use such an inadequate word, via the spiritual triad using the Antakarana. After the fourth initiation, the effects are felt predominantly in the initiate's group and in his field of service. There he constitutes a point of tension and precipitates great points of crisis. His own points of crisis and of tension are existent, but mysteriously only in relation to his consciousness of the group in which he plays an increasingly potent part. The groups affected by the progressive initiatory process to which the disciple is being subjected are 3 in number, and these effects differentiate and condition his group service according to the initiation being undergone. It is from this angle we must study the initiation, the ray effects, and the results produced within the 3 groups. These are: 1. The group in which the initiate is working upon the physical plane, and which is an externalization existing on the mental and astral planes of some phase of work sponsored by the new group of world servers. All disciples and initiates in physical manifestation are at this time members of that group, which is the focal point of the present effort being made by the hierarchy. Through it, spiritual energy from 5 of the ashrams is flowing. These 5 are: A. The ashram of the Master K.H., particularly in regard to the work of education. B. The ashram of the Master D.K., himself, myself, particularly in regard to aspirants for initiation. C. The ashram of the Master R., particularly in regard to the reorganizing and the reconstruction of Europe from the point of view of economics. D. The ashram of the Master Morya, as he seeks to find, influence, and direct the activities of workers in the political field throughout the planet. And E. The ashram of the Master Hilarion, as he supervises the discoveries and the application of such discoveries of the scientific movement in the world today. You will note, therefore, the profound and widespread interest of this field of energy, wherein ray energy is now active. 2. The group which may regard itself consciously as the initiate's own group, in the sense that he is slowly influencing those around him, collecting the personnel, and forming the nucleus of the ashram by means of which he may someday serve the world. All those who are taking initiation do not necessarily create their own ashrams, though a large number do so. The work of those initiates who do not form an ashram is mysterious in the extreme from the point of view of aspiring humanity, and there is little that I may say about the subject. These initiates work in connection with plans emanating from Shambhala, of which humanity can know nothing. They work with the three subhuman kingdoms in nature, each of which has its own peculiar and specific band of initiate workers. If they do not do this, they transfer into certain groups of workers who are engaged in activities connected with the deva or angel evolution, or in relation to the manifestation of energies about which I can tell you nothing. We shall deal only with the expansion of consciousness and the experience of those initiates who remain in their activities and aims related to humanity and to the hierarchy. It might here be pointed out that A, the work of the Deva evolution comes under the ray energy of the third Buddha of activity. B, the work with humanity comes under the influence of the ray energy of the second Buddha of activity, who embodies in a most peculiar sense the conditioning energy of the hierarchy. And C, the work with the subhuman kingdoms of nature is under the stimulation of the first Buddha of activity. Each of these great energizing lives works through certain masters and initiates of the sixth initiation. These masters work in full consciousness upon the Atmic plane, the plane of the spiritual will. From that high level, they function as transmitting agents for the energy of one of the three Buddhas of activity. These three Buddhas are the creative agents of the planetary logos and are wielders of the law of evolution. And 3, the ashramic group of which the initiate is a part and within which his influence or spiritual radiation is increasingly felt. The awareness of the initiate and his ability to work consciously within this triplicity of groups becomes the major objective of all his efforts once the third initiation is left behind. His magnetic radiation and the expression of his controlling energies prior to this stage of unfoldment is that of the soul working through the personality. After the third initiation, this radiation and the energy expressed become increasingly monadic and subject to 3 stages. 1, the stage wherein the lowest aspect of the spiritual triad, that of the abstract mind, becomes potent as the conveyor of ideas. These are transformed by the initiate into ideals for the service of humanity. And 2, the stage wherein pure reason plus the spiritual will makes him an effective server of the plan and a transmitter in a progressive manner of the purpose underlying the plan. And 3, the stage wherein pure monadic energy pours through him, focusing the will to good as registered by the hierarchy in the sense of universality, not a vague phrase but a specific potency upon the physical plane. A close study of these developing ranges of activity and of expanded consciousness will indicate why and how our planetary life is one immense synthesis of ordered activity. The ray energies utilizing the created form world and the world of formless forms, that is, the cosmic etheric levels of activity, constitute a great and applied process of initiatory activity, governing, controlling, and conditioning every expression of divine life in all the kingdoms of nature, subhuman, human, and superhuman. It is into this world of active, moving energies that the initiate penetrates, and within which he must consciously play his part. As you well know, the work of the aspirant today is to become a conscious, self-controlled, and spiritual worker in energy within the ring-pass knot of the 3 worlds, and, as I have frequently pointed out, to function first of all in control of his physical instrument, demonstrating this at the first initiation and during the succeeding initiatory processes. Secondly, to control his emotional, feeling nature, demonstrating that control at the second initiation. At the third initiation, he has to bring into visible activity the mental element, and thus function in the 3 worlds as a soul-infused personality, utilizing the illumined mind as the fusing and synthesizing factor. These things accomplished, he can, again in full consciousness, begin to be active as a radiating point of crisis and a producer of the needed tension. These three groups are essentially points of planetary tension and are producers of crisis in the lives of the individuals influenced and in the hierarchy as well as in the planetary life. Thus, the conditions are created which make evolution possible. Someday, the story of the evolutionary process will be written by an initiate of the Great White Lodge from the angle of its point of crisis and the subsequent points of tension. This enables the living forms under this dual impact to emerge into larger areas of consciousness. Each kingdom in nature can itself be regarded as a point of tension within the sphere of being of the planetary logos, and each, in time and space, is in process of generating those points of crisis which will produce a potent and often sudden moving forward upon the path of evolution. Humanity is today, in its present situation, as a point of planetary crisis, generating such a point of tension that it will shortly be enabled to move forward into the New Age dispensation, culture, and civilization. The study of the individual aspirant parallels this. These thoughts and ideas must be borne in mind as we study the remaining three major initiations confronting average humanity. And that is the end of the second initiation.